go up and just start a conversation. And even if you're the most awkward person, like when someone awkward comes up to me, I try even harder to try to talk to them because I know how difficult it can be for some people. And sometimes the people who are really awkward at first end up being some really good friends and connections for me.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Last Life Ever podcast. My name is Jillian Sidoti. As always, I'm joined with my co-host, Jeffrey Holst. Jeff, who do we have on the podcast today?
Today we have Haydynn Fike on the podcast, and Haydynn is a good friend of mine because he's like the best networker I've ever met in my entire life. He has this podcast called The Art of Connecting, and it's all about networking, and you all should check that out. But here's the thing about Haydynn. I think we should just bring him on. So let's just do that, and we'll see how it goes. Hey, Haydynn, welcome to the show.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
Yeah, it's great. So you know, Jillian and I have gotten to know you over the last, 2 years now, something like that?
Yeah, your birthday party in Puerto Rico is about 2 years ago now, the first trip I did.
Yeah. Oh, actually, no, that's probably just 1 year ago, right? Because you went to my birthday 2 years in a row in Puerto Rico, so we just had the second one.
Yeah. So I've known you for almost 2 years. I guess I met
Jillian. All right, so Haydynn and Jeff can't do math. That's cool. Let's talk about connection.
That seems like a good idea.
The time-space continuum is just a construct, guys. So don't worry about it.
That's right.
It doesn't matter.
Math is not a thing.
All right.
Anyway, So Jillian, let me tell how I met Haydynn really quick, because Haydynn and I went out for lunch or something like that, breakfast or lunch. One time he reached out to me because he's a great networker and he just reaches out to people that he wants to know. And maybe I don't know, 5 seconds after that, it was probably a few days or something, we ran into each other at a networking event, a real estate networking event. And I was telling a different friend of ours that I was going to Puerto Rico and I was excited that we're going to have a birthday party in Puerto Rico. And Haydynn literally got on his phone that second, having only met me one time before, and bought a plane ticket to Puerto Rico, not for 6 months from now, but for 3 days later. And that literally is what happened.
Yeah, hey, you were kind of inviting the whole table, and you thought no one would actually do it.
True.
And I was like,
hey, if anyone wants to go to my birthday party this weekend in Puerto Rico, just feel free to show up. You can stay at my place. And that's what Haydynn did.
And that's what happened this year too. We were at Twin Peaks, and it was 2 weeks away. And I was like, you'd told me about it before, but I was like, I don't know if I can go to Puerto Rico again. And I was like, you know what? I pull up the Spirit app, and I'm like, I'm booking tickets. I don't care.
Spirit. Oh,
I do object to that. I do think that you need to learn to fly like Delta or something.
The taxi of the sky, baby. It gets you where you need to go.
Yeah, exactly. I will say this though, I live on the other side of the island, and I am actually disappointed because Spirit used to fly over here, and it was if you had to just get back to the continental US fast, it was really cheap and easy. You could get a plane ticket for $39 on certain days, and they left, and they're no longer on this side of the island. So our choices are now limited. We have Frontier, JetBlue, and United. And United's screw you. If you want to fly United out of Aguadilla Airport, it's $350. Where and that's if you're lucky, where JetBlue is $150. So
all of those prices sound ridiculously cheap to me. I normally spend about $900 every time I fly to Puerto Rico.
Oh, because Jeff flies only first class.
I only fly first class.
Jillian, that's not first class. That's the coach price.
Because you go
first class. I get the free upgrades.
You get upgraded. Yeah. Well, because you fly out of Chattanooga, which is
I do. And Chattanooga is a lot more expensive than say flying from Atlanta or Dallas or something. But yeah, no, I always fly out of Chattanooga because of convenience. But hey, you know what? Not everyone cares about how we get back and forth to Puerto Rico. Let's get back to networking. So Haydynn, you started a podcast how long ago?
Oh gosh, it's probably been about 2 years now. Yeah, it's been 2 years, which is crazy. Doesn't feel like 2 years ago.
Yeah. And I think you told me once, but I don't want to put words in your mouth, that the reason you started it was actually to give you an excuse to do more networking.
Yes, mostly, yeah. It's I started networking so much and meeting these really cool people, like people that, some people dream to meet. And I was like, I need to like tell the story and tell how it's happening. And I listened to a bunch of podcasts, like real estate podcasts and Action Academy and stuff like that. And I was like, I should probably start one.
Yeah, that's
Well, let
great.
me ask you, Hayden, this is because I know a lot of people. I mean, I actually know a ton of people, especially the work that I do, which is I a lot of times teach people how to raise capital, and people hate raising capital. They hate asking people for money. I was talking to one of my better, proteges the other night, and he literally was saying raising capital is so hard. And even though he knows what to do, he stumbles. And the big stumbling block is in talking to people. It's just simply talking to people and
Mm.
networking. And people get unreasonably, in my opinion, nervous about this. And then I say that it's unreasonable, and then I do the same thing. Like I go into a room and I don't want to talk to anybody. So do you have any rules, I guess is the question. Do you have any rules of when you enter a room? How do you start networking? What are some things you live by to make it happen?
So I feel that sometimes too. So I went to a networking event in Florida. And so kind of my rules are, if I'm going in and I don't know anybody, right? If I'm in Puerto Rico and I go to a networking event and I don't know anyone there, it is one of those things where even though I've done this, I've probably been to 200, 250, 300 networking events. And even when you don't have your wingman or your wingwoman, you feel kind of nervous a little bit, right? It's just
Yeah.
natural. But what I do is I do a lap around the room to start. And I have this theory that there is a certain dress code that people that I want to talk to wear most of the time. Um,
Okay.
and so hopefully I don't get slammed here, slapped on the wrist. But my avatar is someone who's wearing a nice like a button down shirt, but it's like kind of
Mhm.
Hawaiian or fishing, or like what Jeff's wearing with flamingos or what I'm wearing. And then they're often wearing, if you're in a more tropical climate, khaki or
Mhm.
comfortable like fishing shorts, something that's nice and comfortable but decent enough for them to get in the door. And then some kind of slippers, flip flops, or comfortable tennis shoes. And usually they're also wearing a nice Rolex. So that's my person who I look for in the room every single time. Because 9 times out of 10, that guy, or if it's a gal, then it's a lot of times if I'm looking for women, they're also dressed more casually. And you can
Mhm.
tell that you know, they're dressed more casually and they often kind of know a lot of people. So I look for those people, and immediately I just kind of introduce myself. I have another rule that I use is say something interesting. People ask what I do. I say I'm a professional connector, and that gets a lot of "You're a what?" I say I travel the world to network and meet people and to get them what they want, and that immediately starts a conversation, and you just kind of go from there.
That's really cool. Okay, so you have rules of who you're going to talk to. Now, why is it the more I have my own preconceived notions about this, but why is it the more casual address? Like I get the Rolex makes sense, right? Like but like what about the guy in the Armani suit? Are we avoiding him? Why aren't we
Absolutely.
picking him out? You are
I'm
avoiding him.
avoiding the Armani suit because he works for somebody else. That's just the reality.
Oh. Oh,
So I'm
wow.
looking to
Interesting.
speak with
Okay.
entrepreneurs. If you're wearing a nice suit, you don't wear a nice suit because you want to. I mean, I don't know that many people. Maybe if you're I
It
don't know
depends on
any.
context, right? Like, I think if you're at like a fancy thing, you might be
Yeah,
wearing a nice suit, right?
but I'm
But
going to a
like,
networking event.
but you're a Wall Street banker if you're wearing a Wall Street banker if you're wearing a nice suit. But like, you're right about this, and I think it's really smart what you're saying because I haven't really thought about it that way. But the people that are most interesting to me, they might not be wearing a Hawaiian shirt, but they're usually more casual and super comfortable at the same time. Like they're
Yes.
comfortable in that environment because they know there's nobody there that can do anything to disrupt their business. There's nobody there that's going to be like, if they don't suck up to them, that they're not going to get a good result.
Yeah, and I
Mhm.
also am looking for somebody that's not trying to sell me something. Oftentimes the person in the suit is a salesman or sale, if so I'm trying to avoid that because it's a waste of my time. If I talk to salespeople
Interesting.
9 times out of 10, because
Right.
my business, my money is made off of talking to entrepreneurs that are doing transactions.
Sure, sure.
Um, and who I can refer business to and then set up a referral program with them. So I'm looking to speak with the 2 to 3 business owners that are on average at any given networking group, and I want to spend 20 to 30 minutes with each of those people.
So, okay, so once you spend this time with them, so you do a circle. Let's recap real quick. You circle
Sure.
around the room. You're looking for your avatar. You're looking for the casually dressed but put together person. You're making an assumption. I mean, you have to make these judgment calls
Yes,
because
it's
you
a
only
it's a
have limited
100% an
time.
assumption.
Yeah. So you and you have to. I totally get it. You have to. You have a limited time, you have a limited space, you have limited attention span with all these people. You've got to make sure that you use your time wisely and you don't waste anybody else's time as well, right? So you have these parameters, and so everybody can come up with their own parameters based on what they're looking for. Circle the room, and then how do you, like, let's just say this is one problem I've always had. I've oftentimes overheard interesting conversations, but the circle of people who are talking is closed. How can you kind of get yourself inserted into a conversation like that at a networking event?
That's a
And
great
or do
question.
you?
Yes, I do. I do this a lot at Common House, which is where I am right now. One day I was sitting by the fire, and these 2 guys were talking about real estate, and I was kind of minding my own business, doing my thing. And then, like, they're obviously having a closed conversation, right?
Yeah.
It's not an open arms inviting anyone into this. This is Morgan Lane and Matthew McCauley. Um, and so Morgan's a large developer in town, and I overhear what they're saying, and I'm like, I'm so sorry to bother you guys. I always start with like an apology that I'm butting into the group. I'm like, I'm so sorry I'm bothering you guys, but I love real estate and I'm really interested in it. Are you guys in real estate by any chance? And I kind of like, so like, I know the answer to the question that I'm asking, but I always ask that question of like, oh, are you guys in real estate? And like, if you're at a real estate networking event, you can shave this down to like, what asset class do you invest in, right? Because
Yeah.
they're in real estate, they're at a real estate networking event, and they may be like, oh, I'm actually not in an asset class. I own a lending company. We have $100 million
Ah.
in assets under management. Oh, that's really cool. And so that's kind of how I break into that circle is I ask a question, and it's an easy to answer question, right? It's not going to stump them. It's like a give me almost. And then as soon
Mhm.
as they engage with you and they answer that question, you're in. You know what to do from there. You know how to have the conversation.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So
Wow. Okay. All right.
so do you do the like you're walking around a crowd and there's a little small group that you want to get into and they're in the middle of a conversation and you just kind of triangulate them so that they feel like they have to start talking to you strategy?
Yeah, I'll just stand there.
Yeah. I
I'll
love
literally,
that. I do
I'll
that
just
all the time.
I'll just walk up and I'll just stand there and look at them until like they're obviously having a conversation. 9 times out of 10, they'll just kind of like as soon as I walk up and I stand there for 3 to 5 seconds, and it's awkward as hell, guys. It's so awkward, but it's okay because like those are some of my best connections are the ones that I do that little extra thing. But you go stand there for like 5 seconds and then they just finally acknowledge you and they're like, "Oh, hey," and you shake hands. My name's blah blah blah. What do you do? And then you just kind of it's the same thing over and over. And after you do it enough, you just kind of get used to like you just have to have something that's interesting about you to start, and then that'll kick off the conversation.
So what's normally like what's the normal interesting thing you say about you? I guess it's the connecting thing, right? So
Yeah,
you say, yeah, okay. All right, that's great. And then I mean, I guess I haven't been networking. I used to network all the time, but my form of networking was I'd go speak somewhere and then people would just want to speak to me.
yes,
So it made it really easy for me. I didn't have to do any work. And now I'm thinking about getting back out networking and meeting people and talking to people. Let's talk about the after for a
Hey,
second.
let me
So
interrupt you for 1 second, Jillian,
sure,
before you ask that
sure.
question. So I think like um getting up on stage, right, and speaking, and then people wanting to talk to you, that's a legit thing because
yes,
that's how we met, right? Joe's like, I
Right.
mean, like Jillian spoke on the stage. She was talking about raising private capital, which she's an expert at. And I think you guys might be doing an event about that as well. So we can talk about that in a second. But I, we got up on, you got up on stage and you said some stuff that I didn't know, right? Like you were talking about securities law, and I didn't know much about, even though I'm an attorney, I didn't know much about securities law. And I wanted to like meet you afterwards, and you had a networking event that you were hosting. So there's a second step to that, right? The first step was get on stage, and then at the end of your talk, be like, by the way, guys, I'm having a networking event at this bar at this time, right?
I set it up so people come to me.
Yes. And then people showed
there's
up, and
levels to
everyone
it.
wants to talk to Jillian.
Yeah.
And that's what happened, right? And but there's another step to that, right? Jillian, what did you say to me when you first met me? Do you remember?
That I knew who you were.
Yeah, you said, "Oh, I love your show." Right? That podcast that I had, like right on.
Yeah, not this one, by the way, everyone. Not this one.
Obviously, this podcast didn't exist before we knew each other, because this is our podcast. But yeah, I mean, you literally walked up to me and you were like, "Oh, hey, it's good to see you. Like, I love your show," which I still don't believe you ever heard of, but because I think we had 13 subscribers then or something like that, because it was when we had just started it. But the point is still that like that strategy works some of the time. But I think what Haydynn's talking about is a strategy that you can walk into any room anytime. It doesn't even have to be a networking event. If you're waiting in line to get on the elevator, you can use the exact same strategy.
Well, I literally every time I see my mark, I talk to them. If I'm in the airport, it's my mark. There was a guy at the real estate meetup in Knoxville, and he was wearing a white aloe hat. His name's Eli. He was wearing a nice comfy button-down shirt, $30,000 Rolex Skydweller or whatever it was. Comfy, like stretchy pants and Adidas tennis shoes. And I was like, before the end of the night, I'm going to talk to that guy. I rode in his Audi R8 V10 the other day. I invited him out to my friend's birthday party at his mansion. We're good friends now. We're going to do business together. He has a huge, massive, awesome business. And but if I see that person at the airport or in the Amex lounge or wherever I am, I'm going to go and talk to them every time. Yeah. Like, hey, I know this is the craziest thing, but like people that have the appearance that you do tend to get along really well with me. You're going to get someone's attention quicker than anything. If they're going to be like, what the hell are you talking about? And then I can go into it and say what I do. And then lo and behold, every time they have a multi-million-dollar business that I can either bring a connection to or have in my pocket whenever I need something.
Right.
I think there's a lesson here for capital raising too, by the way, because you said, Jillian, earlier, I think that one of your students, clients, whatever, was struggling with the like having the conversation, and that's really what Haydynn's talking about. But I think there's this second step there, right? When it comes to capital raising, is like I can meet Jillian Sidoti. I can have that conversation with you. I can meet Haydynn Fike. I can meet you guys, but that doesn't mean I'm going to be comfortable asking you to invest in my deal or to lend me money. Now, in fact, I have done that with Jillian, although I don't believe I've ever asked Haydynn to invest in anything. But it takes like a certain level of extra familiarity to like take that next step. And I think, Haydynn, what you're saying is you're opening the conversation with, hey, I'm a connector. I travel the world connecting people. That's my business. That's intriguing. And it's really actually really smart, because if I were to walk into a networking event and people say, what do you do? And I go, because I usually say I'm the most interesting man in the world, or like I'm trying to be the most interesting man in the world, which always confuses people. Or my real thing I say now is I'm living my life. I'm trying to live my life in a way that I'm the most interesting man in the world, or something along those lines. And people are like, what the heck are you talking about? Right. So that's the opening that Haydynn's using, is like, it makes no sense. Right.
It's a way to disarm, because at the end of the day,
it throws the conversation off. But the other part that I love about what you're doing is it gives you an opening to your business automatically. So what I think I need to do is figure out something to say when I meet someone that's like, I can still say I'm trying to live my life in a way to be the most interesting man in the world. And when they say, well, what do you mean by that? I need to say something like, well, I do things that help other people live their life in the best possible version of their life, or whatever. Exactly, and then that opens the door to talking about like the mastermind that Jillian and I have, the Extraordinary Life Mastermind, right? See how I did that? I just snuck it in there.
Exactly. I was thinking of it in my head.
Yeah. And by the way, Haydynn is a member of that mastermind, and it's awesome, right? I mean, it's a great
It's
time.
amazing.
We haven't,
Yeah.
it's been a game changer for us these last few months that you've been in there. I've loved having you in my accountability pod. So.
I think we're all growing. And Jillian, I want to mention the capital raising part. So
Sure.
right now, I was at a networking event that I got invited to. We did like a real estate Q&A, Pete Fortunato style, in McDonald's. We started talking about how all of these properties are going to be going to tax auction soon in Hamilton County. So we're literally going out and door knocking these. And the guy it's Rob and Aoka, the guy that came up with this idea, he was like, every year we do this, but we run out of capital. And I was like, don't worry about the money. I made 3 phone calls and raised $750,000 for this soft commits, because we're going to be getting properties. You're going to get a 200% cash on cash return. So it would be a no brainer. Your risk is super high, but I already knew in my head 3 people that are liquid $2+ million right now. And they've been coming to me saying like, hey, I have this opportunity, and whenever you need it, just let me know if you have a really, really good deal. Cause they're all super, like, they love risk. Right. So when I bring them a deal that's like 10%, they're like, I don't care. But if it's 200%, which is not very often, they're like, I'll throw 250 in, because why not?
That's the thing. That's a great point. I mean, this is not just in terms of capital raising. What I try to explain to people all the time is that, the economy looks like it's not great out there, because there's a swath of the population, a large swath, I'm not minimizing it, that's suffering right now, right? Like that is really suffering because of inflation and the cost of things and, low wages and stuff like that. I get it. That is true. But there's more dollars out there now than there ever has been in the history of the world. So you just have to find where those dollars are and ask the right questions and make the right presentations. One of my best fun, one of the people that I represent, or one of my clients who was one of the best fundraisers I ever met, one of the best networkers I ever met, he had a rule of meeting 50 new people every day. Every day.
I don't even do that.
He would go and meet 50 new people. He would put himself in situations every day. And he did this for like, I don't know how many months, but he would always start. I could never get his attention for more than 10 minutes at a time. And he's my client. I'm his lawyer. I'm trying to get him focused. Right. But I could, no matter where we met, because we always had to meet in public places where he could network. No matter where we met, he would always turn around and like, he'd be doing the same thing. He'd be looking for a mark. And he didn't have rules about his marks. He talked to anybody because he had this huge number, right? But he always started with a compliment. Mm-hmm. And they were never compliments. They were never like super obvious or disingenuous. They were real compliments. They were real honest to goodness compliments. And that's how he always started and got these openings. Like this one time we were together and he looks to the right of him and he sees 2 ladies having tea and he goes, "You ladies look like you're having a good time. Are you celebrating something special?" Like that is just like, that's not like, hey, your hair is gorgeous, or, that it was always like these super unobvious things. But he's saying, I see you exuding joy. What's the joy for? Right. Like, so it's still a compliment.
So, I mean, we could probably talk about capital raising for the next 2 days. But if people want to have 2 days of capital raising, they can just go to your event. That's what day is that?
True.
It's July 26th and 27th here in
July 26th and 27th. So it's coming up really soon. I mean, we're recording this in May, but this is going to come out in June. So it'll be close to less than a month away. And it's in Chattanooga, Tennessee, right?
Yes. Yeah, it'll be in Chattanooga.
Live and in person. So we'll make sure to put in the show notes a link to where people can register for the event. If you guys probably doing a webinar or something like that people can get more information about as well. We'll put that in.
But the webinar is in a few days. So if this is going out later, it probably won't be.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, we'll put a link to the recording of the webinar so people can get more information that way as well. But that's great. So Haydynn, we're going to wrap up here in a minute. And since you're literally the best networker I know, and I'm not joking about that, like you are very good at this. Do you have any last minute tips for somebody who's not as good at it? Like say me, about how I can meet someone really cool today?
Yeah, I think Julian, your point is great, and you can apply that not only to in person but to virtual. So if you want to meet someone today, like you said, go in on their social media and go and look over their videos. So like if it's Julian, go and watch some of the videos and take some of those points, DM that person and say, hey, I watched your video on this, this, and this, and I love how you said this. Bring a pointed question to that person and say, Julian, I'm looking at raising capital for a $2 million deal I have under contract right now, and I'm really struggling with this. Julian, would you respond to that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah.
If someone messaged you,
because you don't want to leave somebody hanging there, right? So
if someone messaged you and said, hey, Julian, I want to start raising capital, how do I do that? Would you respond to that?
Say that one again.
If someone just like messaged you like, hey, Julian, I want to start raising capital, what should I do? Are you going to respond to that?
Probably not. And I see where you're going with this. Probably not, because it's way too open-ended. I don't have time. I'm not interested.
Right.
Like, you're just
And I
looking
think
for something from me.
So
I
if
think,
you,
yeah,
that's kind of my point. If you want to meet someone today, go and figure out a way to compliment them. And if it's got to be today, social media is a great tool for this. But if it's in networking too, go up and compliment somebody. I love what you said about that. Go up and just start a conversation. And even if you're the most awkward person, like when someone awkward comes up to me, I try even harder to try to talk to them because I know how difficult it can be for some people. And sometimes the people who are really awkward at first end up being some really good friends and connections for me.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to be awkward.
Well, I'm glad that you were able to force your way into my life, Haydynn, because it's been a pleasure getting to know you this last 1 to 7 years, however long we've known each other since we've already learned that our math doesn't work. But I know it's less than 22 years or something, because you'd be basically not born yet.
It's been less than 23 and a half years. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. But anyway, thank you so much for being here, Haydynn. If people want to get a hold of you or connect with you, what's a great way to connect with you?
Yeah, my favorite way to connect is Instagram and Facebook. So Instagram is at Haydynn, Haydynn, invest, INVESTS. I post all of my real estate adventures on there, which we actually didn't talk about at all. But I also invest in a bunch of real estate, do flip houses, self-storage, long-term rentals. And so that's always an adventure. And then also, if you love travel, we talked about that a little bit. It's at Haydynn Travels, spelled the same way. And then Facebook, it's just Haydynn Fike. Social medias are the best way to reach out.
Great. We'll put all those links in the show notes as well. And so we'll look forward to seeing what amazing things you do going forward. Because the one thing about Haydynn is, Jillian, I don't even know if you know this, but like every once in a while I'll be like hanging out with him at a cigar lounge or something, and he'll say something like, last night I was at the governor's mansion talking to the chief of staff, and I'll be like, wait, you were at the governor's mansion? She's like, yeah, well, I met him at this thing and he invited me to come by, and so I know when you're doing that now at 23 and a half, that like when you're 24 and a quarter, you're going to probably be at the White House. So
that's awesome.
I hope so.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Thank you for all those nice comments, Jeff. And thank you guys for having me. And I'm just here to help other people. So please reach out if anything resonated. I love to talk to people and to help. So I'm here for it.
Right. And make sure to check out his podcast too, The Art of Connecting, because it's great. My favorite episode is when he interviewed me, but there are other good ones too. So.
That's right.
Awesome.
No, there aren't any other good ones, honestly. It's just Jeff's. That's it.
Just that one. All right. Fair enough. I'll accept that. It's the only one I've listened to anyway. No, I'm just kidding. I actually listened to several of the other ones. It's really it's really a good show, and people really will get a lot of value on checking it out. I've actually learned a lot by some of the guests that you've had on. So thank you so much for everything that you do. And Jillian, is there anything that you would like to remind everyone before we jump off?
I want to remind everybody to live the best version of your last life ever.